Hello everyone, may I ask you to return to your seats please? Thank you. So our next session, led by Dr. Pauline Nolan, Inclusion Scotland's Head of Participation and Policy, will be discussing the Access to Elected Office Fund, and Pauline will outline the impact the fund has had for disabled candidates for elections in Scotland. So please welcome Dr. Pauline Nolan.
Hello again, everybody. I'm introducing this presentation about our Access to Elected Office Fund that we run on behalf of Scottish Government and soon on behalf of Scottish Parliament. There's been a change in legislation, but that's with a caveat that I can't launch it properly because budget decisions are still being made by Scottish Government, the Ministers' budgets have come out and they're coming down the line into departments. So we're waiting to hear if we can launch the fund. But saying that, once we relaunch the fund, we will have funding available. So I just want to talk about the past impact that the fund has made to disabled people wanting to really stand as candidates in both local and national elections. So the origin and aims of the Access to Elected Office Fund, it was funded for Inclusion Scotland to deliver in 2014 to do research into disabled people's access to politics. So really about the broader barriers, I'm just going to move this down a bit actually, about the broader barriers that disabled people face to getting involved in local politics, because of course what's the likelihood that you're going to consider becoming an elected member of a council or a parliament if you're not already involved in some level at campaigning locally, at being in community councils and things like that. So it's that soft area of politics that we did research on. And the key barrier identified was the additional costs faced by many disabled candidates to compete on a level playing field with non-disabled candidates in elections and selections within the political parties. So Inclusion Scotland recommended the first Scottish Access to Elected Office Fund, and it was given to us to administrate for the 2017 council elections. How it works, before I go into the results and what happened, I want to talk about how we put this in place. It takes a person-centred individual approach. So we support disabled people who are interested in being elected, whether it's for a council election or the parliament elections that are coming up next year, with an application. And it's quite a fast process, but we always provide that one-on-one support. And we focus on identifying what might help overcome barriers to ensure fairness. So it's not based on medical assessments or proof of need. It's really important for us as a disabled people's organisation. And we have a parallel project which promotes access to politics throughout Scotland, removing barriers to becoming involved in politics in the first place, as I was saying. The fund criteria says that you must define as a disabled person using the definition recognised in the UK Equality Act 2010. You must be seeking selection and/or election in the local authority elections or the Scottish Parliament, including for by-elections. You must be eligible to be elected in that election. You can ask for any form of support which can be shown to be a reasonable adjustment for disability-related barriers. In other words, that will level the playing field but not result in an advantage. And examples of support given would be transport costs like taxis, assisted technology, software to attend online meetings, for example, or to even email people that you're working with, personal assistants, communication support workers for people with communication impairments, needing BSL and things like that. So that initial election was really a litmus test on how successful it would be, and we did it for the council elections in 2017. We had 44 applications to the fund from about 67 inquiries in total, and we had a 100% success rate for funding. So that means that most people, if they didn't drop out for other reasons, got funding to allow them to compete on a level playing field in elections. 39 of the applicants were selected as candidates or ran as independents, and 15 of these were elected as councillors. So someone on my table was saying, we need more disabled councillors to challenge the norms and to challenge the barriers that councils and COSLA put up. And this is one way of doing it, more disabled people making the decisions that affect disabled people's lives. Then we had, in quite close succession, the 2021 Parliament and the 2022 council elections. So firstly, for the Parliament elections, 28 people were awarded with the fund, 21 became regional list or dual consistency and regional list candidates. None, unfortunately, were elected, and I'll come to that in a minute. But 5 disabled people, or people that declared themselves as disabled, were elected to that Parliament without accessing the fund, and we worked with some of those. For the council elections in 2022, 54 people were awarded with the fund, 46 became candidates, and 22 disabled people were elected, which represented 48% of fund recipients. So just under half the people that used funding to campaign were voted, which is quite an impact. We have worked in the past with the 1 in 5 campaign, which was established by disabled people who were also talking about political representation. And that 1 in 5 disability campaign was saying that, there are 1 in 5 people in Scotland are disabled, more than that possibly now, and our Parliament should reflect and represent all of us. But it doesn't. It would take about 25 disabled parliamentarians to actually represent the real number of disabled people in Scotland. And, that is a challenge. We can level the playing field, but we can't ensure that all disabled people are elected. All we can do is use the fund to support them in their campaigning so that the campaigning for them is accessible and they can do it alongside non-disabled candidates. So moving on to some of the feedback that we've had from disabled people who received the fund. We were told it was very simple and straightforward. Every individual I spoke to was very knowledgeable and helpful. We were told a great experience and staff were wonderful and supportive. And we were told it was excellent and I couldn't have managed without it. Now, this was feedback from the last election in 2022, and it's warm words, but we want to continue to make sure that people have that really supportive experience. A panel of disabled experts will be selected and we'll use that panel to make decisions on applications, and then they will make a recommendation which we will help put in place. And that's how it practically works. And we are hoping to launch this fund on 1st of April this year, if not sometime in May. We're keeping our fingers crossed that we hear something soon. So if you're interested in applying for the fund, if you're interested in becoming a candidate in the parliamentary elections in 2026, please get in touch, because we can make a note of your name and your details, and we can get in touch with you once the fund is properly launched. The email that you can do that on is civicparticipation@inclusionscotland.org, or you can call the number 0131 370 6700. Thank you so much for listening.
Thank you, Pauline. So our event today is sadly drawing to a close soon, but before I invite the final speakers to the stage, on behalf of Inclusion Scotland, I'd like to say a massive thank you to all of you for taking the time out of your day today to be here and supporting the impact report and also the organisation in general. I would like to invite the following people to the stage, the first of whom is Heather Fiskin, CEO of Inclusion Scotland, and also Inclusion Scotland's co-convener, Dr. Jim Elder-Woodward, OBE. Thank you.
Thank you, Sam. Hello again, everybody. I hope you had a lovely lunch. I certainly enjoyed it, but I was talking to so many people that I had cold pasta while Pauline was speaking, but it was fine. It was lovely. So thank you for bearing with us through the day. And it's always really important that we finish on time because we know that people have travel arrangements. And, you know, it's Friday afternoon and people have travelled to come here. It's tiring. So we will make sure that we leave on time. So I'm just going to say a few words about what we're going to do next. First of all the conversations that we had in work groups is being captured, and we will take that away, we will work with that, because every time we speak to our members, we learn something new, or we understand that something is becoming increasingly a priority, and we need to focus on it, and we will do that. And I think colleagues from Glasgow University have been round to ask you to take part in some research. I beg of you to please do that. It's so important. And I'll tell you why it's important, because it partly feeds into our next steps. So Inclusion Scotland is a membership organisation, and our full members are disabled people's organisations themselves, organisations run by disabled people themselves. And they cover all parts of Scotland, all communities. But it's really hard at the moment, and I did speak about this briefly this morning, how hard it is to be an organisation at the moment, but funding is disappearing, and demand is increasing, but also because people still don't really understand what we mean when we say a disabled person's organisation, or what we mean when we talk about the independent living movement. Everybody's heard of the Black Rights Movement and the Women's Movement, but do people really understand what we mean? I mean, the public is bombarded with the images of plucky Paralympians, and I take nothing away from them because I know they really train incredibly hard for their achievements. But that's not the reality for the majority of disabled people. They don't see the barriers that we're having to confront every day. So the next steps for Inclusion Scotland are to try and continue and to do even more to make sure that people understand what the independent living movement is, the disabled people's independent living movement is, what it means in Scotland, and hopefully grow that movement by getting more people to come in. Now, we're not the movement. We're part of the movement as Inclusion Scotland, so we will work with the movement. Now, that can be organisations, or it can be activists, and we heard from two activists this morning who have done a great job of bringing attention to the areas that they want changed. And I was really taken with Callum's story, actually, because he spoke about how he didn't want to take away from the fact that change was needed, wholesale change, even though he had to do something about his own situation. And he managed to balance that, and I thought that was really clever. So we will, at Inclusion Scotland, carry on working on what we understand the priorities to be. And at the moment, that is things like the cost of living, employment, the pay gap, the employment gap, income from benefits, but we need to go further than that. And one of the things that my colleague Rihanna is working on at the moment is not just how much we get from benefits, but the dignity of using the benefits system. How undignified it is, how it makes people feel, because we have a right to that income if that's what you need, and it should be the right amount of income. So we will keep pushing on these priorities, everything to do with cost of living, the extra heat and energy costs that disabled people face. Why? Because they're disabled. That's not right. And income from benefits needs to increase as well. And we will continue making more opportunities for disabled people in DPOs to meet with the decision makers, but also service providers as well, because these are the ones who implement these decisions. So it's incredibly important. When we make policy, sometimes it feels like maybe it's in an ivory tower and you put the policy out and you kind of hope that the health boards and the local authorities and the education authorities will actually implement that policy as it was intended, but it's not always following through. And at this moment in time, disabled people are at the bottom of the food chain, if you like. So we have to be at the top where the decisions are made, but we also have to be in the middle where the implementation and the practice is. So the other thing we'll be doing, and it follows on nicely from what Pauline was talking about in terms of access to politics, there's a Scottish election coming up in May 26th, and we have in the past produced manifestos. So we will do that. We will find out what people want to say to candidates and political parties, and we will produce a manifesto, and we will share it with disabled people so that they can use it with the candidates in their own areas. We won't be the only organisation doing that, so you're bound to find a manifesto that you like, but hopefully ours will really show what DPOs and disabled people say the priorities are. And the other thing about doing that is if there is going to be a new government, or if there are going to be new MSPs who maybe haven't been in Parliament before, then it helps to start building the relationship with these people so that we can campaign with or to them. But mostly we will be looking at, not mostly, equally we will be looking at growing the independent living movement. It's incredibly hard at the moment. But if I think about some of the stuff that we do, and you will see that in the impact report, where we're doing briefings, where we're campaigning, then we're going to turn that into tools to help DPOs and disabled people, which is what Gráinne was talking about this morning, which I hope you will have a look at the campaigning toolkit that she's done so much work on. It gives you pointers on what you can do. So there is a lot of expertise in our organisation that's been built up over the years, and we want to share that with people, and we hope you will use it. And we also want to think about the sustainability of the independent living movement, because people age, people move, people change, more disabled people, or more people are becoming disabled. Younger people, we've had traditional ways of doing things, of reaching out to people. Are we going to the universities? Are we thinking about the things that are of interest to young disabled people, like climate change, for example? So we need to do that. We also need to be thinking about disabled people who have more than one protected characteristic, because the barriers they face are so complicated, and we need to be making sure that decision makers, whilst dismantling one barrier, aren't actually creating another one for a small population of people with a combination of protected characteristics. So we're going to be very busy, and I can only say that I really look forward to seeing you back here or somewhere else about this time in a year's time, where we tell you everything that we did in 2025. But I really hope you will join us in that journey, because Inclusion Scotland is nothing without its membership. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Heather. And then to Dr. Jim Elder-Woodward.
Thank you. On behalf of the board, I want to thank you all for coming here today and for your active participation in today's seminar. I hope you've enjoyed today and you'll come to more of our joint meetings, because we are stronger when we are together. Together we are much stronger force. I also want to thank the members of staff who worked so hard for this day, and it's been a very good day. Thank you to Hera and her staff, and I hope you will join me in thanking the staff by clapping your hands to say thank you for a wonderful day. Thank you.
Thank you. Wow, we've actually finished early, Rich. Wow, I didn't expect that. On behalf of Inclusion Scotland, just a massive thank you to all of you for being here today, and thank you for supporting the launch of the Impact Report and the Toolkit, and just for generally supporting the organisation. And a massive thank you to Dynamic Earth, their fabulous hospitality. And now is an opportunity to network, to mingle, and we'll have some soft refreshments available as well. And if you need your parking validated, see Amy in the pink pantsuit. Thank you.